Good afternoon. It is 4:31 p.m. on October 10th. I call this meeting of the Clear Creek Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been duly called and that its notice has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. No community input. And we'll move on to item 4A, consider approval of the human resource report. Do I have a motion? Ms.
Mr.
Davis?
President, I motion that we accept the human resources report.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Any questions? Seeing no questions, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. And that motion passes unanimously. And next, we'll move on to item B, consider approval of resolution regarding emergency purchasing for compressed natural gas compression stations.
Okay, yes, Mr. President, Mr. Miller and his team have worked tirelessly since the natural gas compression station failed on September 26th. Many in our transportation department have driven to Pasadena for refueling buses, and a temporary solution was secured last Friday, and it worked over the weekend to begin fueling buses here. Mr. Miller will share details regarding the system failure with the board and a recommended permanent solution request for you to consider. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Dr. Engel. It has been an exciting couple of weeks, especially for our bus drivers. This is something that we feared for quite some time, and it happened a little sooner than we had hoped. Getting us really to this ability to fuel buses, at least temporarily, has really been a concerted effort between Alex and his team and Ed Hall and maintenance and Dwayne and transportation, really to make sure that all the little moving parts got taken care of to at least be able to provide some fuel to the bus. The bus is out there, and it still requires some fueling at the station. But it does cut down how many times they have to go. So I'm gonna hand it over to Alex and let him kind of go through some of the details, and then we'll be ready for questions.
Okay, thank you for having me. So a couple of weeks ago, I guess, we lost the last compressor to the CNG station. Maybe within the last year, because the CNG station basically is the equipment was a company that we utilized out of Italy. So we were having difficulty getting replacement parts for them, and we're also having difficulty reaching the service company. We made numerous tries and efforts, and weeks and months to try to resolve. But in the meantime, we were using parts from the first compressor so that the second compressor could run, in hopes that we could keep running it until later on when we had planned to replace the entire system. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, so the system went down. We temporarily had to fuel, like Dr. Engel said, in Pasadena. We had an opportunity to rent a temporary compressor that we've hooked up right now, so it's able to fuel the buses, but we still have, like what Mr. Miller said, we still have to go to Pasadena to do some of the topping off. So it's getting us by temporarily right now. In the meantime, we've reached out to a company that has dealt with the district, and we are securing pricing for a new station with U.S.-made parts and compressors, and the ability to service the new equipment immediately. So some of the things we're looking at that we're going to categorize would be, where do the service people come from, how long would it take if we call for them to come and fix the equipment, because that's important to us based on what we're dealing with the Italian company. We also have the problem with the compressors is that they're very long lead item. Equipment 8 months, 9 months before it gets here. We also have an existing generator that we did in the 2013 bond that has to remain. So we have to make sure that the new generator, that the new compressors that we put in, the generator will work so that if we ever lose power, we can still function. So right now, we're looking at the different sizes of horsepower for the compressors. And we're trying to figure out horsepower to pricing. So that's where we're at right now.
So we're asking the board to approve and adopt a resolution regarding emergency purchasing for compressed natural gas station. That would be a not to exceed amount of $2 million. We think we're going to come in significantly lower than that, but we wanted to leave enough there to where we could get really fast and get moving on the contract to get the items ordered. As he mentioned, it's 7 to 8 months before we would actually see it. So that would put us into next summer if we were to order it today. So it's really important in terms of how we would execute that work and get the stuff ordered. And we will be within the 6-month duration as per board policy in terms of the emergency declaration. So we'll open it up for any questions.
I'll open it up to the board. Any questions? Mr. Larson?
Yeah, can you give us a kind of a rough estimate of how much extra this is costing us on an ongoing basis to do this temporary thing instead of, as opposed to what you envision the permanent solution will cost?
I would have to get back with you on exact numbers. I can tell you that the frustration level is pretty expensive.
Okay.
I would have to really nail down how many miles, how many hours, who's doing it to make sure I can give you a reasonable estimate of that, and we can get you that rapidly. I just don't have it.
All right.
No, go ahead.
Are you asking for bids for this from different companies, or how are you're just
We
gonna?
will be soliciting proposals from multiple companies.
Uh-huh.
They're just not necessarily apples to apples. They're going to be unique to their proposal. We have to review, as you mentioned, we have to review compressor size, how fast does it fuel, is it all of our requirements met, like having dual compressors so we have the redundancy, how does it coordinate with our existing electrical infrastructure. So part of that will be the evaluation, including price, and then warranty and location. All of those things will come into play. It's the length of time to get apples to apples during a construction project where you're really making everybody bid exactly the same thing for an RFP. That's what ends up taking us so long in terms of the procurement requirements, which is what's driving the ability to do this. And we would update the board regularly on our progress and then report back on the contract that's led.
And we have another compressor, you said, from the 2017 bond that is still working?
No, we rented a compressor that's a mobile compressor that's, I don't know, 25 years old.
Oh.
That one of our partners that we worked with back when we built the station, he had one in his yard that took us a little time to get it operational. And they're spray painting because it's working, and that's really the important part. Is we were really lucky to have that available, and our guys worked really hard to get that thing operational. We had to run electrical and plumbing to it to make sure it could work. Had to test safety systems to make sure that all the emergency power off buttons and everything worked to make sure it was safe to run.
We started fueling for the first time Saturday afternoon with the temporary compressor.
Mr. Bone?
So in the larger sense, I mean, how much do you think we've saved? And I guess an estimate would be good for now, but I'd like real data in the next couple weeks, maybe. But how much have we saved? A lot of money by using compressed natural gas up to this point?
We have. The last calculation that we did, which was on a per mile basis, because that's how we were really analyzing whether we should continue with CNG. The average price we were paying to operate the CNG buses was 18 cents a mile compared to, I think it was 42 cents a mile for diesel. So there are also incentives from the federal government that we get that offset for the gas alternative fuel, which is definitely impacting that. So if that were to go away, it might not be quite as good, but it's significantly less expensive than running diesel. And as volatility happens in the market, that's really the intent behind that, was making sure we had more than one fuel source so that as one went up, the other would typically go down. I can get the estimated cost savings that we've gotten from those buses over the last couple of years, just so you can see that information.
Okay, and that kind of answers my next question also, which is you you have already run the numbers on whether it even makes sense to continue with the natural gas program. I mean, leaving aside the fact that we have a bunch of buses that use it, that obviously we would have to cycle out if we stopped. But I guess if we were starting from square one and thinking about buying a compressor to use natural gas, it still makes sense even having to buy a new piece of equipment to run it.
It does. It does make sense in terms of cost. Of course, when you bring in the cost of the station, it tends to skew those numbers a little bit. So we would need to allocate or amortize the cost of the station and how long we think it would need to be replaced. Fortunately, the first time we did it, it was no cost. That British Petroleum actually paid for the original station. But now that we're actually incorporating, having to shell out money for a replacement station, and that needs to really be part of that assessment. But it would still be profitable in terms of cost less than other fueling sources.
And as part of the compressor project, are we also getting a spare, or are we just getting the one?
The compressor is a dual compressor station for redundancy, just like we had before.
Okay.
The main difference is it's not going to be from Italy.
Right.
And we have, and that's part of our evaluation will be availability of parts that aren't unique to that manufacturer. So we're looking for companies that are making proposals for readily available parts, O-rings, valves, all the things that you use in that. We're much more likely to find that in American-made products than we were for the Italian-made items. So that's been a challenge. We had actually obtained funding back in 2013, I believe, from the board to purchase $40,000 worth of parts so that we could keep that from happening, and ultimately ended up using up those and more. And then it has become increasingly difficult to even source parts from them.
And do we have a district critical spares program for equipment like this? Because I know I'm sure this isn't the only piece of equipment we have that we're kind of praying doesn't fail, and that would be difficult to repair or replace if it did. So, which we'll
We
get to
have
later
quite a
in this
few
workshop.
that are part of the priority replacement cycle line items. When we design buildings, we do have systems where we provide redundancy, and we alternate use of those so that if any one goes down at any point in time, we have an alternate. The cost to do a full program like that exceeds what we have historically had in funding available to do that. But we do, in terms of our design, try to account for that so that we're not left.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Miller, did you say how old these compressors were?
They were put in 2011.
Do we expect the life of new ones to be about 10 years, 12 years?
I would have carried about 15 years.
15
but
years.
Because of the lack of ability to have parts, it's really pushed that forward. If it's more maintainable and easier to maintain, then you could stretch that out a little bit. But they are electric motors that drive compressor engine. It's basically an engine that is driven from an electric motor that compresses that gas, and it's at high pressures, so the maintenance requirements are significantly higher. I would have expected to get a few more years out of it. But we did have it as priority one because we knew the condition and the difficulty getting parts.
And these particular ones are the ones that were donated, or that were included when we started using
That's
CNG?
correct.
Okay.
So they paid for the conversion of 44 of our diesel buses to a natural gas bus, and we purchased, I think, I want to say 15 to 18 additional buses on top of that over the years.
Thank you.
Not really a question, but more comments, and Mr. Sanchez kind of stole my thunder, or actually you did, by answering how many buses that it would affect. I remember years ago, and I can't remember how long ago it was, but we had talked about the maintenance schedule, and maybe it was during the 2017, so it would have probably been 2018 when we were talking about the purchasing of new buses, how much cleaner a CNG, you know, the maintenance and everything, once you break down like some of the engine components and things of that nature, how cleaner it runs compared to diesel, I think, and even gas for that matter. So I'm assuming that's why it's kind of critical that we, you know, repair these. My next question, I guess I do have a question. Instead of Pasadena, does Alvin still have their CNG, or I think they?
I don't know the answer to this.
Okay.
I could try to find out other.
I was just curious because I know that they were one of the first districts in our area to go to CNG.
I know Santa Fe had them for a
Right.
while, and then they
Years ago.
opted out of it. We acquired two, I think, from, say, Brazosport ISD,
Okay.
used CNG buses at a really good price.
Okay.
But I'd have to research that to determine how many other districts it would.
And then I think Ms. Davis asked the question on the, and I'm cognizant to the fact, having an Italian motorcycle, how difficult it is to get parts. But hopefully the American-made product, I'm hoping that maybe this $2,000 or $2 million, would that also include being able to maybe get, you know, when you think of compressors and things of that nature, O-rings, you know, some of the high wear, you know, maintenance items, would we be able to purchase those as well with this declaration?
Generally would not do it as part of the declaration unless we worked it into a minimum
Gotcha.
parts, you know, like we would do for a construction project where you have attic stock. We can certainly write that into the proposal requirements.
Right.
So that each vendor provides a minimum number of parts that go with it. Ultimately, once the 6 month passes, anything you buy after that would be outside of any emergency declaration. But we would have a contract to allow us to do that.
Okay.
And our transportation department currently has budgeted money for repair and maintenance of those systems, whether it's diesel, propane, or gasoline. All those are part of the same repair and maintenance. It's just when you can't get the parts,
Right.
it makes it much more difficult. Yeah, it would come with a 1 year warranty.
Okay.
Parts and labor.
Okay. Great. Any further questions? Well, seeing no further questions, I'll ask for a motion. Mr. Sanchez?
Mr. President, I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the use of capital project funds of $2 million for facility-related projects.
Thank you for that motion, Mr. Sanchez. Do I have a second? Mr. Larson? Any additional questions or comment? Seeing no additional question or comment, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. And that motion carries unanimously.
Okay, and Mr. Miller, were you gonna, did you have anything else there?
Well, did they just approve the capital funding request, the use of capital projects?
Yes, and I think that they need to approve the resolution
Resolution.
first.
Okay.
Yes, so, that's the item before.
Yeah, the resolution was the.
I apologize. I was reading ahead.
I think I was right there with you.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Let me, I can
It's
amend
to
that
adopt the-
motion, or how would you like me to do that?
Can I maybe just make the motion to adopt the resolution, and then we'll reconsider the other one, so that we can.
That's fine. That's fine. Mr. Larson, are we good? Okay.
Parliamentary?
All right, so Mr. President, I move that we adopt the resolution regarding emergency purchasing for compressed natural gas compression station.
Thank you for that amendment, Mr. Bowman. Do I need a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Checa, thank you for that second. So we are adopting the the resolution regarding emergency purchasing for compressed natural gas compression station.
And just to clarify, this is a separate main motion to adopt the resolution, and then what we'll do next after this passes, I'll make a motion to reconsider the other motion.
Gotcha.
So that they're in order.
Gotcha. And hopefully, seeing no further questions, we'll call for a vote. All in favor? Thank you. And that resolution passes unanimously. Next, Mr. Bowen.
All right, I move that we reconsider the approval of the use of capital projects funds of $2 million for facility-related projects.
And thank you for that motion, Mr. Bowen. Do I have a second? Mr. Larson? Thank you. Seeing no further questions or comment, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. And that motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Barker, for keeping us straight.
One
Mr.
more
Bo-
thing, now we have to actually take a vote on adopting. So that was a motion to essentially reopen consideration of the approval. Now
the
we have
approval.
to actually approve it.
Gotcha. So I'll call for a motion. Or
We're already in the motion.
we're already in the
Yes,
motion.
We just have to
Yeah.
go to the vote.
So I'll call for a vote to adopt the amendment. Am I getting this straight, Mr. Larson? I didn't
Adopt
write
the
it down.
resolution as amended.
As amended.
As amended, okay. Next, I'll call for, for Monday, this is a lot of, and I'm coming off vacation. I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All right. And that motion carries unanimously. Thanks for keeping me straight, guys. Greatly appreciated. And next, we will move on to, would that be item
Item 5.
Item 5A, information and discussion. Item A, discuss CCISD Board of Trustee election administrative services.
Yes, so we would like to just share a little information with you and then bring this back to the board meeting. But for over 20 years, CCISD has conducted our own elections. Over the past several years, election laws have changed and the process of running elections has become a little more challenging. We've also received community input over the last 6 months asking us to consider outsourcing our elections. So as you know, our district spans 2 counties, and so Ms. Benzai has been working with both counties to look at outsourcing the elections and what that would involve. And so she is here today just to kind of present some information to you for consideration and discussion. And so I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Benzai.
Good evening. So today I'm presenting you with information about the election administration process, the challenges we're faced in running our elections, and I want to provide you with information that we've gathered over the past couple months regarding contracting with both counties, Galveston and Harris, to administer our elections. I want to thank Jenna Brown. She's been instrumental in helping me put together this presentation and answering all of my questions and answering them 2 times and 3 times sometimes. So thank you, Jenna. So in preparing for this meeting, we met with Wendy Fregoso. She's the Chief Deputy of Elections with Galveston County. We did not meet with any election officials from Harris County, but we did reach out to them with questions, and they were able to provide feedback to us. A little bit of historical background. As Dr. Engel stated, we've run our elections for over 20 years. We may have always run our elections, but I didn't have time to go back and look all the way to the start. We did have a unique year in 2020 because of COVID. We did contract with both the counties as our May elections were postponed to November. And that was for District 2 and 3, which are the elections that are coming up. So right now, both of the counties, as we've spoken with them, they're immersed in the upcoming November elections. They will not start planning for the May election until after they've gotten through this November election. So the information I'm providing you is based on the information that they, and fee schedules of what they have right now, or, excuse me, what they've done in past elections. So just a quick look at our upcoming elections and timeline. We do have our District 2 election coming up in May, and that district spans Galveston and Harris County. And the District 3 election, that district is solely in Harris County. So moving on to May of 2024, we'll have actually 3 elections, District 4, 5, and our at-large election. Our timeline for the upcoming election, things start moving pretty quick here in a few months. We will be required to post our election notice online by December 19th. And then when we come back from the holidays, January 2nd, we will start handing out packets to as they are requested. And then January 18th is the first day to file for a place on the ballot. The board will approve the election order January 23rd. In February, we have to confirm our streets and precincts with the county if we're going to utilize the county. February 17th is the last day to file for a place on the ballot. And sometime in March would be when we would provide Harris County our intent to contract with them. The early voting period starts April 24th through May 2nd, and then of course Election Day is on May 6th. Some of the challenges and considerations that I think are important for us to look at when we're looking at whether to keep our election administration in-house or to outsource it is that we are, of course, in 2 counties. That presents challenges doing our elections in-house, but they're very different from what we have when we outsource. We deal with 2 different voter registrars, and the information that they have coming to us when we run our elections is very different. So we do have to work with both counties. One county cannot, if we were to contract with the counties, one county will not run the election in the other county. So that's why if there's an election for a district, as we have coming up, that's in 2 counties, we would have to contract with both of the counties to run those. We have battled with a shortage of election workers. This was a big struggle with our last election. With the new machines that we have as well, we've determined that we really cannot run a site with just 3 workers. We really have to have 4 workers just because of the logistics that we have in the polling place. So that is additional workers that we need. And so that is always a struggle, is to hire those temporary election workers. Of course, the absentee ballot by mail administration was a big challenge this year. We received, I don't have the number for the number of applications and the ballots that we had to mail out, but we did receive over 2,400 ballots by mail this year that have a unique method of having to be processed with the new laws. So that was, of course, very difficult. The cost is a challenge when we're looking at outsourcing, and you'll see more of that in a few slides, but it is difficult to estimate the cost of what it would cost to outsource. And of course, we just purchased new equipment. We spent over $250,000, so we do have new equipment that we have purchased, and so that's a consideration to remember. And then the other thing that I looked at is just the ease of the voting process on our voters. So, contracting with the county, both counties utilize countywide voting. So a voter can go, that's voting on a CCISD election, can vote in Galveston, a Galveston County voter, or same with Harris County, they can go to any polling place and vote. So that is very convenient. They don't have to go to a separate spot to vote for their school district representative or trustee. So in looking at contracts for election services with the counties, this is provided through Chapter 31 of the Election Code. It is interesting to note that our counties are a little bit different. In Galveston County, the election officer is the county clerk, and in general, there's no duty to contract or to offer contract administration services with other entities. In Harris County, the election officer is the county's election administrator, and they must contract to furnish services requested, except on the May uniform date and an even-numbered year. However, both counties are willing to run our elections. They, I think, have approached us several times in the past about running the elections for us. So just wanted to put that out there just so you can see the actual requirements that the counties have upon them. So in contracting with the county, there's several duties that go to the county. There's still several duties that the school district maintains. The main duties of the county I've outlined for you here. They program our ballots. They conduct their machine testing, the test of automated tabulating system logic and accuracy, and they publish the required notice for that. They provide all of the election equipment, the ballot production, and the support. They provide the ballot by mail services to us. In Galveston County, in our conversation, they actually have staff, and that's all they do is just full-time process those ballot applications and ballot by mail. And then they also will hire and train all of the election workers. They do appoint the presiding judges, the early voting ballot board, and the central count presiding judges. They do select early voting and election day locations. And I provided what they've done in the past for those locations for you so you can get an idea of what that looks like. The Galveston County did say that they would consider if we had a specific location that we wanted to use, that they would be willing to incorporate that into the election polling places. They will provide us a sample ballot for approval and then provide all the early voting and election day services. And then as far as election results, the election results are provided on the Harris County website for us that evening. And then Galveston County will email us the election results. One thing I did notice that Harris County has a whole department that is geared towards working with entities that they contract with, and so they have great presentation materials, training materials for the entities that they contract with. So that was good to see that they had that kind of support. And the several duties that the district would maintain if contracting with the county. We would still post our notice of general election and deadline to file the application for a place on the ballot. We will still provide our candidate packets, and we verify the candidate eligibility. We create and approve the order of general election, and we post the notice of drawing for place on ballot, and we still conduct that ballot drawing. We do have to provide for translation services for our ballots, language and public notices, and we provide that language to the counties. We do provide the updated maps to the county, and we do that now if our single-member districts change. And, of course, if there's no contest, we prepare any certifications and orders of cancellation of the election. We publish the notice of election in the paper, and then we accept and file all the Texas Ethics Commission campaign finance forms. We also prepare the canvass of the general election and prepare the certification of election, oath of office, and statement of elected officer for winning candidates for the board approval. So I spent quite a bit of time in looking at the cost to run elections, and at times it was a little bit frustrating to try to dig into this and hone in on it. I've highlighted a few things, but I did get from another entity that contracted with Galveston County their last two bills that they had. And basically what Galveston County does is they will take all of their election cost for the entire election, and in May they divide it by the number of entities they contract with, and so it's that's your ending cost, is just the total cost divided by, in this case, in May of 2022, they had 21 entities that went in on the election services, and they just divided up among those. So really, the cost is based upon the overall county election costs, whatever those come to. We'll find out. They can give us an estimate, but we'll find out at the end what the actual cost is. If there's fewer entities that are contracting, of course, our cost will be higher. In this case, there were 21. So the more entities that go in together in Galveston County, the better, lower cost for each entity it is. If you look over at Harris County, they actually had 55 entities in May that they contracted with. There were, the county, they had 6 school districts, a college, 7 cities, and 40 special districts. They've changed their method for calculating the fee to entities. This is very different than what they did in 2020. Currently, they charge $2.10 per registered voter and plus a fixed fee of $2,575. So you can see that because in the upcoming election, the number of registered voters, I think, is in Harris County, maybe around 20,000. That cost would be $45,000. But if we utilize Harris County for an at-large contest or a bond election where we have upwards of 100,000 registered voters in Harris County, you can see that $2.10 can make it a lot more expensive, upwards of over $200,000. So that's where the high costs come in, is in those at-large or any bond elections. So looking at what Clear Creek paid or expensed in May of 2022 for that election, I took out some fees that we'd have regardless if we ran our own or contracted out. It came to about $58,000. If we were to continue to handle our own elections, I pulled out the dollar amount of $20,000. We'd have to get more support for our absentee ballot or our applications for ballot by mail and those mail-in ballots to make sure that we handle that process as best we can. So just looking at the comparison, I think if you look at contracting out for District 2 and 3 in May, the cost is going to be very similar to what CCISD is expending now. The difference will really come in years that you have at-large contests. And so you can see the contracts will run over $200,000 for those versus our approximately $78,000 that we spend now or will spend by running it ourselves. I wanted to just talk a little bit about absentee ballots by mail. Of course, the counties will handle all vote by mail requests. Their early voting clerk sends out notices of rejected applications for ballots by mail. But the nice thing that the counties have access to that we do not is that our voters can track the status of their mail-in ballot and make any corrections or on a defect on their application online through the Secretary of State's ballot by mail tracker. So I think that's a good thing for our voters to have access to check on the status of those. I wanted to take a look at some of the tentative polling places for this upcoming election, just so you would have that available. And I think the counties probably typically use the same places for their elections. Within Galveston County, you can see there's several early voting locations that have notated by the asterisk around the county that are in Clear Creek ISD zones. And then there's actually 4 additional polling places on election day that they provide. Harris County utilizes a lot of our campuses, and see the upcoming election, we've been working with them to make sure that they have the space they need and it meets their requirements for the upcoming election. So these are the locations that they're looking at for November of 2022. So just to recap some of the advantages I think that I found in contracting our administration to the county, the countywide polling location program where voters can vote at any polling location during early voting and on election day is, I think, a great benefit to our voters. They won't have to visit multiple sites to cast their vote for the school district trustee. And then the absentee ballot by mail administration services are provided. So that's a big advantage for us. The county hiring all of the poll workers and judges, of course, that's, as I mentioned before, a struggle that we have in finding those poll workers. We do, when we run our own election, we our technology department develops the database and maintains that voter database, and so that would take that requirement off of them to build that and maintain that database that we use to track our voters. We also the counties have large election departments and they have the expertise, and so running our own elections, it's myself and Jenna, and so it's, we have full-time jobs with other duties, and so this is something we do additional, and so it's difficult to put that all on a small group, and the counties have very large departments with the election expertise. I put no storage of equipment, ballots, and other election supplies. That's, of course, we do own the equipment currently, and so that's a question that we'll have to determine what to do with our election. And I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. We also anticipate we would have higher voter turnout in contracting with the counties. So, of course, there's also challenges that go along to having the county administer our elections. Contracting with 2 counties is probably the biggest challenge that we have. District 1, 2, 5, at large, and any bond elections, we would need to utilize both counties to run those. Costs are difficult to estimate. I think I have a good feel that, it'll be more expensive with at-large and bond, but I think our costs will be pretty even for whether we outsource or don't for those non-at-large elections. The one interesting thing is that early voting weekend times differ by the county, so we could have one of our upcoming elections, the Harris County side of part of that election, they offer early voting times on Saturday and Sunday during the early voting period. Galveston County does not, so you'd have some Harris County voters could go in and vote Saturday and Sunday, whereas Galveston County voters could not. We would have to be very at the beginning, provide our voters with information on, if you live in Galveston County, these are your voting locations versus Harris County and the times. Election night return timing is dependent on the county, and that this, I think, was probably more of a challenge for Harris County in their last election, we try to get our returns out that evening, but we'll be at the mercy of the county as to when they start rolling in the number or the returns to us. And then finally, of course, the investment that we've already made in our election equipment. So I believe, and I'll get to the equipment in a minute a little bit further. I did go out to different area school districts and do a survey to see who runs their elections. For the districts that have November elections, Harris County does handle those. I think we had maybe 3, Spring Branch, Deer Park and Galena Park, and Katy. They do run their own election. Katy ISD is similar to us in that they're split between Fort Bend and Harris County, so they do run their own. Jenna and I checked with a couple of these districts that are split with different counties, but the counties that they're split with, there's one county that one of those doesn't have any registered voters, so it doesn't matter. So this is what we have for our voting equipment. about $250,000 worth of voting equipment. We can, if we were to contract out, we can sell that equipment. We do have to get approval from Hart in order to sell that equipment. We've actually, Jenna has spoken with Hart, and so, that's a possibility if we were to do that. I think we've had one county that was interested in using some of our scanners. I don't know if we can lease out the equipment, but we can't, okay. We can't lease out the equipment to another entity, but we can sell it. My recommendation would be to, I think this equipment has probably a good 5 to 10 years in it. I probably would want to hold on to it and see how things go. If we were to go out in May and utilize the county, I probably don't want to jump out there and get rid of our equipment until we go through the process with the county and see how that goes. So that concludes the presentation. In looking at just overall, I came in, I guess, right before the last election and watched, so I don't have a lot of expertise with it, but I think really looking at the whole system, I think it boils down to really our time, our manpower, and expertise. That's what the three things that it boils down to when we're looking at this. And so it's our recommendation that we pursue a contract for May of 23 election services with Galveston County and Harris County for the District 2 and 3 election. Those contracts probably will not be ready until after they've finished the November election and they've decide how they want to structure their contracts. But this is, I think, in looking at the challenges and considerations in the past couple of elections, this is what we would recommend that the board administer the elections through Galveston County and Harris County. And I will be happy to answer any questions.
And I'll open it up for any questions or comment. Ms. Davis?
Mr. President, I think we had discussed that with our last election, the issue that came up with the lawsuit, that could still happen if the counties are running our election. That situation wouldn't have anything to do with who was running that election. Okay. Also, the counties have been running elections for a long time, and I know at least Harris County has had some problems in the recent past in some of their elections. I don't know about Galveston County so much, but what do we have to watch for before we decide to sell equipment, before we feel comfortable that the counties can run our elections well?
Well, Harris County, I think the main concern there were concerns with the last election that they went through. They do have a new election administrator there. All we have is what happened in our November of 2020 election, so we do have some experience in working with them. And I think everything went fairly well with those. I think the biggest challenge that I think Jenna said she faced was just voters calling, not sure where to go to vote. But we have that challenge now as well. So I think just going through the process in May, that's why I don't want to sell the equipment, because it may, if we have problems and decide to bring it back in, we'll have our equipment. But I feel comfortable with both counties running, based on what I've learned and researched, with both counties running the election.
Thank you. Oh, wait, I have one other issue. It still disturbs me that Harris County, 11 of the 14 voting locations are our schools. And I just, from a safety aspect, I know we're always reassured we've got, the kids are protected on our campuses even during times of voting, but I would really like to get the voting out of our schools. Do they give any wiggle room on that? Is there anything we could do?
Well, this year, the upcoming elections, there's no early voting at any of our schools. So these are all election day places. So they will, it is a Tuesday, so they will be on our.
We legally can't tell the county no when they request it, and we've
Yeah.
tried, and we've explained to them the safety concerns. Galveston has pulled out, but has not, obviously. Because it's free for the county to use our schools, so.
So you said there would be no early voting for
At
the
our
May?
campuses, at any of our campuses, this November election.
Oh.
Right.
And the November election is a teacher IP day, is that correct? So we will not have students on campus, and the calendar committee did that last year. So we will not have students on campus that November election.
But if we do it
the
in
8th.
May, we will have kids on campus.
Except it's usually Saturday.
Saturday.
Right,
The
I
early
think.
voting?
So you're saying that early voting is not at the school locations?
Not for this November, and I don't think they had any at the May this past,
They
I don't-
did, Westbrook, Creekside, Clearbrook.
for early
Yeah.
voting.
They did.
Yes.
So there are, okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Miller?
Yeah, so I think just a couple points. Thank you for looking into this. I think this is an incredible amount of information and very well researched. And I think the point about this being kind of a secondary job for a lot of people is an important one, because the financial, I guess, could you estimate, and I know this is a very hard estimation to make, but the 78,000 you estimate does not include time of salary staff who have to spend time dealing with election issues, putting out fires, and looking at things as they come up, right?
That's correct. Even Jenna's time, my time, it's only overtime cost in there. And so it doesn't include any of the time our technology department spends on working on that, the software application that they have. So there are other costs that aren't included in there.
Exactly that, and I think that's an important point. There's a lot of administrative energy that has to go into this that would be better spent on students and schools, and instead it has to go toward elections when we run them ourselves. And so the cost of that, just looking at the 78,000 versus the 237,000 in at-large years, I think that's kind of the hidden piece of that too, that evens that out some, is just how much time everyone in the district has to spend on this, that is already being done by another entity. And so, anyway, I guess my other question would be, if there are changes in the Harris County election administration apparatus that happen after the November election, how would that affect this contracting process?
So they do have to, they do have a duty to run our elections in May of, I think it's, let's see, May of 2023. I don't foresee there'd be, any change in that decision. I'm not sure if I'm answering your exact question, but, they have a whole services department within their administration that handles just entities that contract with them. The numbers, I think it was 50, close to 50 entities that they had in the last May election that they contracted with. So it's a pretty big process, and I don't foresee they would stop doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Because a little bit of the history there is the election administrator is pretty new.
Yes.
The way it worked for most of the history of the county is just like Galveston County, where the county clerk's office ran the elections, and it was only a few years ago that the county court created the position of the election administrator and took that duty away from the county clerk and the county tax assessor and voter registrar. And so there's a possibility that those functions could go back to those roles, just like it is in Galveston County. And I don't know when that would happen. I'm sure that's not something that can happen quickly enough for May 2023. But if that did happen, then would that would that force us to start from square one, or do you think we would probably not have much trouble?
I can't answer that. I can't, it would, at that point, then they would not be required to contract with other entities, so, you know.
That's why they didn't run our 2017 bond election. They didn't, we had to lease equipment from the counties for that election, so in theory, I guess they could say no.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's a factor of keeping that, hanging on to that equipment, is just if that situation occurred, if Galveston County decided, you know, we can't do this, especially if it's a bond election. I don't think we have enough equipment to run a bond election. We'd have to lease it out, lease more equipment from another entity, but that's, you know, always a possibility, so.
I have a question. When the equipment that we purchased, did we purchase enough that we could run a bond election with? We have enough equipment to do that, or was it more for an at-large and for a single district election?
We purchased enough for an at-large and single district. Part of the problem with the bond election is, by law, the county is not supposed to tell us no if we ask to lease equipment, but Harris County has stated they will no longer lease equipment, even though by law they're not supposed to say that. Which I have reached out to the Secretary of State about and haven't received a concrete answer as to why Harris County can deny it, but no one else can. So legally, they're not supposed to tell us no, but I guess technically we don't have enough. Or if we do, it'll be long lines.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Mr. Cottrell?
Can you pull up the slide that was the cost of election? I just want to ask a question to be clear.
Okay, let's
The one before
see.
that.
The comparison of election.
Yeah, the comparison, I just want to be clear. All right, so the lower right corner where it says comparison of election costs, District 2, Ms. Davis is part of 2 counties, correct? All right, part of Harris and Galveston?
Yes.
So where it says county contract of $70,000, is that both counties?
Yes.
Roughly
Yes.
35,000 or so?
Yes, it's about, and again, it could possibly be more because we just don't know how Galveston
Right.
County will split out, how many entities will go in.
Yeah.
But if it's similar to this past May, and they keep their fee structure the same for the upcoming May of 2023 elections, that is what it would be. And then adding in the estimated cost for Harris County totals at 70. Harris County actually was at $1.05 for this current November election, and then came out with, they basically doubled their fee just a few months ago, so.
So I appreciate that clarification, because I think I was looking at, 5 of 7 of our trustee seats are dual county seats. And so that was real important for me to understand that 70,000 would consider 2 counties in that cost. Because, I mean, when I look at that, again, CCISD holding its own elections is about 156,000 compared to outsourcing 307,000, right?
Can you repeat that?
So CCISD, like if I was to add up 78,000 across, is about 156,000.
No, that 78 is what it costs us to run District 2 and District 3.
2 and 7?
2 and
Okay.
3 at this, yes,
and
at the
3.
same time.
Okay. All right. So, and again, that's why I'm asking to get clarification. Okay, like I said, because of five of our seats, there are dual county, so it's not as much as I was concerned about, which is really good. I made a note under challenges and consideration, the term just unintended consequences. And I'm glad this isn't an action item right now. It's just information and discussion, because I think for all of us, that's where we have to kind of think outside the box and just check and double check of what those unintended consequences are. Some good, like those hours, like, Trustee Bowen was mentioning y'all's time to actually do X instead of Y because it's adding on to your workload of things. But, Trustee Davis mentioned this last election, and, there was conversation when we were going through all that about future elections. Hypothetically, one of the two upcoming elections is challenged. And, with regards to this past year, the district had to basically defend itself and its handling of it. So in the event either of them are challenged in a lawsuit, and the lawsuit's against them, other than hiring an attorney, they have no control. And we and the district, are out of it, right? I mean, it is 100%.
Yes, we actually reached out, I think it was to Galveston County, about if we had a similar situation, and so that's correct. They would assist us if there was a recount required, but the cost would be borne by the folks running in the election,
So the candidate still will get sued, but the candidate can do nothing because they're at the mercy of Harris County or Galveston County to defend its results. Correct. I mean,
It would be the candidates. If it were a similar situation, the candidates would be, it would be between the candidates as it was this past year, yes.
I mean, this last election without lawsuit, I think opened a lot of eyes and possibly concern for people to run, qualified candidates that could potentially be sued, but have no control. I mean, it's probably a flaw in the law and nothing that the individual can really do anything about. Again, the lawsuit really should be about the entity that held the election whenever they're challenging the ballot handling and things like that, as opposed to a lawsuit against Mr. Sanchez or Ms. Davis in upcoming elections. So that's why I mentioned like unintended consequences. It's everything from, we want to encourage people to run for the school board, regardless of financial status and ability, financial means, ability. But, we don't want to dissuade people from running, or the fear, that gets in people, well, I don't want to get sued. And so that, again, unintended consequences. And I think other than that, you mentioned that Galveston County was willing to add locations. And, when I saw this earlier and looked at it, I know fire station number 4 is on the west end of League City off of Bay Area Boulevard. There wasn't much else on that list. So I would say if we move forward with outsourcing to them, we take a look at all of the voters in locations and try to make sure we accommodate that. I know that they'll appreciate only having to go to one location to vote for city council, mayor, and trustee, or whatever is all on the ballot at the same time. I know like Kima's mayor election, people had to go here for that, and then they had to go over here to vote for trustees this past May. But, so I know they'll appreciate that, but, looking at the map and identifying areas where, we know that we've got a lot of residents on this side of town and we need to add a location here or there. So, I want us to, again, unintended consequences and make sure we can kind of help the situation and help address some of those things. So,
And I did specifically talk to them about that in Galveston County, and if we have a location, they're willing to work with us. If we have a location that's an additional location that we may have to pay additional, just cover the cost for that particular location. Of course, they are the final approver of those locations, so it is we can recommend and ask and try to make that happen, but they're the ones that the county will be the final decision maker on those.
And I'm not trying to volunteer our schools. I'm saying just having that conversation, because like the neighborhood I live in, we have a clubhouse, and I think it's been used for elections, once upon a time. So there are locations other than schools, but just to make sure we kind of keep that in mind to allow everybody those. And that fire station's not a good place if you have long lines and rain and parking issues. Just saying. It's,
Yeah, and kind of to that point, on the Harris County side, I think we'll be pretty well covered. Everyone in Clear Lake is used to voting at Freeman. And I mean, that's been an early voting location pretty much consistently for decades. And then Pasadena will be having its city election also. And so I'm sure there will be a voting location for that that overlaps pretty nicely with the Pasadena parts of District 3. So
Harris County has a lot of locations. So I was, when I pulled up, Jenna told me, and then I went and pulled up the map, and I was amazed at the number of locations that they have. So they do have a lot of locations.
It's part of why they're part of, so I guess I would like to know, and I mean, maybe they didn't enlighten you much on this. I've kind of got my own theories, but why is Harris County so much more expensive than Galveston? I mean, is it all due to that formula? Because we have a pretty even number of registered voters between each side of the county. Is it just all due to that formula that they use?
I believe it. I mean, they do have more, it's a larger county, and they have, you know, more locations, and so their election costs are very large. And you can see they've got a little bit over double the entities that they're going in with. But that was one challenge in 2020 when they handled our elections, was finding out how much are we going to. They gave us an estimate, and it was, you know, a formula. This is our estimate of costs, and this is your percentage share. So they had all the entities listed, and it was not based on a per registered voter. It was based on, I think, the number of total cost divided by the number of registered voters you had. So the formula was different, but I'm not sure where they come up with the $2.10, but that's, like I said, they doubled it. It was $1.05 initially and doubled in price. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what, you know, how they've arrived at that.
It charges per registered voter. They don't care if they actually voted or not in the election. So we've also asked them, can you just charge us for the number of people that actually vote? And they said no. So of course, we're like the third or fourth largest entity in the county. So that's another problem.
But go ahead.
So one more question, kind of what Mr. Cottrell was asking. So the 237, is it that's the estimated cost for an at-large?
Correct.
Is that would that be the same cost for like the other 5? Because I know 2 and 3 are the specific counties, but for the ones that overlap, would their costs be closer to the at-large then, because they would have to do 2 counties?
No. So it'd be based on, for District, I think it's District 2, there's around 20-something thousand registered voters in District 2 in Harris County. So, but when you look at an at-large, it's all the registered voters in Harris County and CCISD, which is about 100,000 registered voters.
So any single district would fall under that 78,000? 70.
Yes.
Thereabouts, close to.
Right, and the breakdown on that is, for the Galveston County side, whether it's districted or at large, it's 25,000 no matter what, pretty much, right? It's just however many entities are conducting elections, whether they're tiny like Kemah or giant like us, they divide it equally among all of them, right?
That is how they structured their past election. Of course, they may structure next May differently, but that is how they've structured their contracts and their fees for this past election.
So for Harris County, when we have an at-large election, the Galveston County piece is likely to cost $25,000, like always. The Harris County piece in a districted election is only $45,000, but in an at-large election, it's $212,000, because you're adding in all of District 4 and a big chunk of District 1. Which District 4 is covered in an at-large election anyway, because the at-large election is going on at the same time. So you don't actually have to consider that in the cost, but that whole area and all the people who live in it are included in the cost in those years, but they're not when we just have the 2 and 3 election.
Correct, correct.
so can I clarify something again? On the same subject, So that 237, that's roughly the cost to run one at-large seat election, right?
It would be the cost for, because in 2 years, we have the at-large and we have District 4, District 5. So District 4 is all in Harris County, District 5 is split, and we have an at-large. So they would only charge us for 100,000 voters, registered voters. Some of them will be voting for their at-large and for District 4 or District 5, but they don't double charge us for
Right.
just District 4, just District 5, and then at-large. They'll just charge based on the total number of registered voters because we have an at-large going on.
Right. So like this last May, we had an at-large seat, and we had a district seat that was part Galveston and part Harris. So that 237 plus 25,000, right? Because are we 237 plus
Yes.
25,000? So this last election, hypothetically outsourced, was roughly $262,000,
Correct.
as opposed to it cost us 58.
Wait, no,
Oh, wait.
that would
No.
not be correct because.
It would be the 212 plus the 25.
Which is the 237.
212, so that is the
So
237.
two
So
of our,
212.
of our election cycle, 2 of the years we would pay 237. 1 of the years we would pay 70.
Based on the 100,000 at $2.10 a person.
Right.
Yes.
So that 237 is basically what it costs, hypothetically, what it would have cost this past year in May, as opposed to 58,000.
Correct, except their fee was only $1.05 or, yeah. But
With their
yes,
current
looking
fees.
at this, that's what
With
it,
their current
around
fees.
what it would be.
So 100,000 plus.
Yes. Excuse me.
Difference in
Yes.
costs was about $100,000, give or take.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't believe I have any questions, but I do have a couple of observations. First, I'd like to echo Trustee Bowen's comments. Very good job pulling this packet together. We really do appreciate the information. I want to observe that when we made this decision last year, it was because of the very high cost estimate that Harris County gave us that we decided to run the election ourselves. And the difference was so great, we could afford to purchase the equipment for roughly the same price they would have charged us to do 1 year's election. And that's apparently not the case, because again, just applying the formula to 1 or 2 districts instead of the entire Harris County portion, looks like we get a break this year, and it looks like this comes in a little cheaper. And in addition, I don't want to discount the fact that it's less of a burden on our people. There's a hidden cost in there of people working to support the election that doesn't always show up in the numbers. And in addition, we also get the benefit of people being able to vote at 1 set of polling places instead of 2 sets, which I really appreciate that. So I think I am very pleased to see the way this has all come together for 2023. However, we get socked again in 2024. So I think it is very wise to hang on to that equipment, just in case we get another one of those really high estimates again. I am hopeful and optimistic that if there are changes in the Harris County administration, that the price might come down considerably. But we won't know that until after November at the very earliest. So I appreciate the package you've pulled together, and I do think it's a very good recommendation.
So I have a question, Mr. Larson. Are you suggesting that maybe some elections CCISD would run our own election? Some years we would have the counties do it?
That's what it looks like to me, because in the years where we have the district elections, it's in our favor to contract it out. And if these prices stay the same, in the years where we have the at-larges, it's not in our favor. It's several hundred, it's over $100,000 not in our favor. So that's the way I see it as of today. And like I say, I hope that changes in the future, but that's the hand of cards we are dealt with today.
Yeah, I think the possibilities out there that the Harris County picture could become considerably more favorable after November is, I think, what we're saying. So.
And I think, I just feel like it would, if we go through this next cycle in May, see how it turns out. I can't promise that they're going to deliver because they're a separate entity, so that we're contracting with. I feel comfortable that they will deliver their services and they have the expertise to do it. But it will be a good to run through it, see how we feel about it after it's done, and hang on to our equipment, and then be able to make future decisions based on our experience that we have with them in May.
Right. Yeah, I think we kind of get the best of both worlds if we do it that way.
Any further question or comment? Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, then I would say then I think moving forward, we don't need we're not looking at a vote necessarily, but direction. Going back to December 19th, we use the deadline to post election online. So our direction needs to be finalized when?
It does, because we really need to start preparing ourselves to run an election if we're going to do it. So the earlier the better. The actual contracts, as I said, the counties are busy with the November elections. It's very hard to get a hold of Harris County, and so Galveston's been easier to work with, but we're not going to get any idea of the contracts, the actual fee structure, any of that really until January, February. So I think if we have direction, if that's the avenue we're going to pursue is contracting with them, it's just, no actual agenda items, but just direction that if we want to move in that direction and go to contracting out.
And then we'd bring the contract in.
The contracts would come to the board for
February.
approval.
You see, we wouldn't be able to bring that contract until we received it from the county.
So this would be brought later on for an action item, like at our October or November
I don't know if.
board meeting?
We don't have to do that unless the board specifically, I would think, wants to vote on that.
Yeah. Ms. R. Mechanic.
Right, so, I mean, if, based on the general direction, we could move forward now without formal action by the board to go ahead and contract out. And then not come back to the board until those contracts are actually ready in February. Unless it's the board's desire to actually formally vote on it as to whether to do it, in-house or contract out and then agenda.
Yeah, I would much rather, bring it up for an action item and vote on it.
Okay. So we can do that in October or November? We would need it by the latest November.
Earlier the better, so
Right.
I'd like
Yeah.
to do it in
Earlier the better.
October.
So maybe a good path forward would be in October, we have an agenda item that would simply be the recommendation to pursue contracting the elections, and then we would just ratify that with a vote, like we would any other superintendent recommendation. But there would not be any spending attached to it.
Correct. And we bring that back in the spring.
Right.
All right. Next, we'll move on to 5B, discuss critical infrastructure needs and funding options.
Okay, and as we get started with that, and we appreciate the direction previously, critical infrastructure needs were shared back with the board and kind of give you an update of that in August. And Mr. Miller shared those, and his team has carefully gone back over those and prioritized them to really designate the most urgent, which have the potential of disrupting campus or district operations. So the original priority totaled a little over 300 million, but he has reprioritized those to identify those, like I said, that are most urgent over the next 18 months. So he'll be sharing some details. You just have some information in your packet, and he will briefly go over those. And then Ms. Benza also has someone we would like to propose a potential partial funding option for some of these most critical needs.
It's me again. So part of the list that we had presented to you guys back in August was the CNC station. And so that's similar, the approach here was similar to that one. It's really looking at items that have a potential of disruption to school operations. And Alex and his team, as well as Dustin and his team, and transportation really spent a lot of time looking through that. So I'm gonna kick it over to Alex to talk about and give us his process that he went through, and then go through the handout that we just gave to you guys.
Okay, thank you. Last time I presented, I gave you guys a pretty big binder, so I kind of shrunk it down this time. But what we did was really, life cycle was going to be the most impactful, and that basically dealt with equipment that was aging, that like mechanical, plumbing, and electrical, that kind of fit into life cycle. So we took that, and I re-met with all of the maintenance department people and basically said, last time I talked to you, we were kind of stretching this out between 1 to 5 years or 1 to 3 years. What are the critical items that, in your opinion, within 18 months, we're going to be in trouble with regards to not only potential entire school shutdowns, like air conditioning issues, but also maybe some departmental issues like closing down band halls or gymnasiums because the equipment there fails or stops working. So we kind of did a breakdown of the 18 months, and you can see from the information we provided that the first one with regards to the life cycle, which is the critical infrastructure, came in at $59,585,335, and that basically deals with the only topics we had were electrical, life safety, mechanical, plumbing, and technology. And that's the technology of that is the technology inside the building. So that's the facilities part of the technology. Then we reached out to transportation and asked them to provide us kind of the same kind of situation. So Dwayne sent me a little report on his findings, on his needs for 18 months. And his 5-year plan was originally $15 million. His immediate 18-month need was $5,238,103, with the understanding that right now buses are about a year away. Lead times have become pretty bad. So this is becoming very urgent because we're basically going to lose a year before we can get a bus. We provided that information. And then I got with Dustin's group on the technology, and we broke that into 2 categories, technology infrastructure and the devices. So the infrastructure came in for the 18 months at $7,028,000, and the technology devices came in at $3,322,500.
This information, a good chunk of it was provided in the Friday packet last week. Just to kind of give you a recap, we've got the priority 1 and priority 2. I explained it a little bit in the memo where priority 1 is virtually everything. Priority 2s, the ones listed are simply the life cycle 2s that you get to the $300 million, because the life cycle was the one that was broken into priority 1 being 1 to 2 years and priority 2, 3 to 5 years. So we felt it important to include that. But then when you look at it, what I'm deferring are things like architectural, things that are they're not going to cause the building to go down. They're still very important critical needs, but they're not going to cause the building to go down. So the things like that would be a 25-year-old carpet in the building and things that they have an effect on the campus, but they're not going to cause us to not have school. So that's what this really was intended to zero in on, those things that cause us some pretty significant risk, and we really should have a plan relatively quickly to handle those issues. And then Alice, as we mentioned, has some information on funding options related to these critical infrastructure items.
Okay, so in looking at the funding needs, there's very limited options, obviously. We have, of course, general fund balance, but we're sitting on about a little over 70 million in general fund, with about 9.8 million of that is surplus over our required board policy for general fund balance. Our capital and contingency fund, looking at that, we do have funds there, but we have about 47 million. We have about 9 million of that is committed to cover our deficit, transfer over into the general fund for this budget year, so that would leave around 38 million. So those two are very limited sources of funding. So I have Ryan O'Hara here today to talk about the remaining $30 million in authorized bonds from bonds 2017 and what it would take if we were to go sell those bonds. So he's prepared a presentation tonight, and he's going to give us just a market update and a timeline if the board desires to sell that $30 million.
Thank you, Alice. Again, Ryan O'Hara with Huntington. We had a very interesting interest rate market, as you well know. I think about a year ago, we were at 2.4% on a 30-year mortgage, and now it's pushing 6.5%, so it's been very challenging out there. But as Alice said, we do have the $30 million in remaining authorization. There is a hard copy presentation in front of you as well. I stole the first chart here from a good friend of mine, so he let me put it in the presentation here. It's basically a snapshot of MMD, which is municipal market data curve. That basically, for all muni bond sales, this is the curve that everybody looks at, and based on your credit quality worthiness, you're off of this curve. There's been a lot of pressure based on the Fed and inflation. If I wanted to highlight the last little leg there, August the 6th. From August the 6th till the end of September, the bond market did not experience a positive day, meaning interest rates went up every day for that period of time. The first 2 weeks in August were the first relief that we've seen. So that graph is actually trending down now slightly, but it has been a very, very interesting year on the interest rate side of life. The next page is simply, I wanted to show you this. This is the 30 million. This is an amortization schedule. The original bond program, when we did our estimates, we estimated this would be sold at 4.75%. So I just dropped that in here. If we sold the bonds today, we'd be closer to a 4.2%. So I don't want you to lose track of the fact that these would be AAA permanent school fund guaranteed bonds. It's the gold standard, not just in Texas, but across the country. So about 4.2%. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know where rates are going, but we've had such a sustained increase. I think the rest of the year we're going to have some stability. Bonds typically, October's a weird month for the bond market, but typically November, December are pretty good rallies, a lot of cash coming in, year-end bonuses, things like that. We're hoping that the recession doesn't kill that type of activity, but historically November and December have been very, very good in the bond market. With that, I did put together a schedule of events. Interest rates are the big driver there, but we do need to go talk to the Permanent School Fund. TEA does a Permanent School Fund bond application. The way that works is you send in your application, you've got the 1st of the month or the 31st of the month, and then in November we would wait the 20 business days and get that back. It's the princely sum of $1,500, but that's what the AAA PSF application process is like. We would start working on the bond documents, or preliminary official statement that all the buying community sees, run preliminary numbers, have rating agency calls, and we could actually be in the market the week of November the 28th with closing and funding around December the 19th, the week of December the 19th. wish I had better crystal ball on interest rates, but I do think we had such a bad run beginning in August that I think we're going to settle into a little softer tone in the market. But historically, if you look back 30 years, 4.2% is not too shabby. Be happy to answer any questions you might have. This is about as fast as we can go, just based on that TEA bond application process and avoiding Thanksgiving and things like that.
And I'll open it up to the board for any questions. Mr. Bowen?
I've heard anecdotally, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, are we approaching just statewide the limit on how many bonds can be guaranteed by the permanent school fund?
Yes, we are. The advantage that we have on this is the size. There is actually going to be, the way that the rules are laying out. I had a call today with one of the lawyers who actually interfaces with the TEA on this. So there's an IRS ruling that we have to live by, and we're waiting for the IRS to give us a new ruling to allow for an expansion of that program. We are reaching capacity. I don't think it's going to happen until probably February is what we're projecting in the industry. That's kind of a loose, but I was buoyed by the phone call this morning because a district going out for $300 million is not going to have as good a shot for a district going out $30 million. So we have issued in the past. Clear Creek has issued in the past without permanent school fund guarantee. The window's closed a couple times in my 30-year career, and we did have one bond issue that didn't have the PSF because it was closed. You have AA rating, so you're one notch below that AAA. So standalone, you do really well too.
So how much does it add to the interest rate if we have to do that?
About 5 to 7 basis points across the curve. It's 7 on the long end, 5 on the midterm, and 1 or 2 basis points, if any, on the front end of the yield curve.
Okay, so basically 4.3 instead of 4.2?
Correct.
Okay.
Use round numbers, yes.
Yeah. So with that question, is there ever an advantage to skipping the TEA application step and just issuing?
I don't think so. It's
Okay.
such a cheap, I mean, it does slow our, it doesn't really slow us down too much because we have rating, we have all bunch of other things. We got to get the bond order in place. The board would have to pass the parameter order, which I have on here for the 24th if we want to move forward. But it's $1,500. It's, so those 5 to 7 basis points for $1,500 in a couple of days on the calendar to wait. So I can, the way it works is I fill out your application and have it done in like 7 minutes. So it's all online.
Okay.
So it's not a big deal.
And then this is probably more a question for Paul, but if we authorize this sale, then this doesn't commit us to any of these particular projects. The projects will still come before us one by one like they always do, and we'll vote on them individually?
That is correct.
Okay.
So we would follow our standard process. It establishes that as giving us the ability to move forward with that planning process. And we would dive really even further into looking at timing and when we really think these specific projects need to go, considering lead times and what the implications are on that and condition. So there's still a good bit of work for us to do before we're even ready to start packaging projects, other than the ones we already know about, which is Clear Springs, League City, and Space Center, which is those that we've already been working on and moving on.
Thanks.
Well, I just wanted to say, looking at what you presented tonight versus our Friday packet, thanks for going back and sharpening, your pencils on in terms of what those critical needs are. So, anything else?
I guess I'll make a comment, and I guess over the past few years, I typically vote against bond projects, and not everybody does, and so usually they pass anyway. But for Bond 2017 money, it should be spent on projects that were in the Bond 2017 proposal. And that's how I've always thought about this. And so we have contingencies just in case those projects go over budget or we come up with requirements on those projects that weren't anticipated in the planning process. It's like the example I always go to is we planned for, I believe, $7 million to be spent on school security in the 2017 bond, and we spent $28 million because the Santa Fe shooting happened in between the passage of the bond and the planning of the projects, and we realized that the community approved spending on security, but our outlook on what that actually involved dramatically expanded in that time. And so I guess to articulate a principle here, a lot of these categories that are listed here in the infrastructure needs are things that were anticipated by the 2017 bond. Technology spending, I'm sure some of the maintenance and equipment projects as well. And so as these projects come before us, if they're related to what we originally asked for, then I'm fine spending bond money on them. I mean, that's what they're for. But if they are not related to the original project list in the 2017 bond, then as always, I would want us to find another way to fund them. And so if we've got 30 million to parcel out across this project list, that's how we should do it, is connect them back to original 2017 needs that were approved by the community in that election, that we are just updating as we need to. So that's my only comment on that.
Thank you for that comment, Mr. Bowen. Anyone else?
Can I ask, would you like me to work towards coming to the board with a bond payment order on the 24th? Is that where we're, I gotta get the lawyers involved.
Yeah, this was just information.
Right,
and
it was
then
just
we're gonna read
information.
If we want to move forward,
Okay.
then,
All right.
but that was
I'll cool my
just,
jets.
is that,
I would think we need to.
I mean, based on my reading of the agenda, we're not allowed to take action
Right.
on
Correct.
approving a bond
Right.
issue.
correct.
Okay.
But I would anticipate action.
I would anticipate action.
Will be on the
beyond-
agenda.
We will
that
meeting.
yeah, put this on the agenda for
Right.
October board meeting.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I wanted to thank Ryan for coming.
Sorry I was late, but thankfully the agenda helped me.
Good deal. It's always good to see you. And then I wanted to thank Paul for being a part of a couple of the presentations this afternoon, and Alice as well. Thank you for, as Trustee Larson, and I think Mr. Bowen pointed out, lots of information. And I know it was a lengthy process in terms of phone calls and coordinating and things of that nature. So thank you for that. And I guess with no further business before the board, I will adjourn us at 6:06.
And thank y'all for being here.